Don't be fucking stupid, even if you count your freedom over, I don't know, what is it, like your health? I don't give a about your freedom.
Okay, well, why am I not surprised that some celebrity does not care about people's freedom and would like to just go with the promoted narrative? Hello, potential viewers, welcome to my channel. If anyone should learn anything from the dreaded and cursed celebrities Imagine Sing-Along video, it would be that the celebrities that gain their fame by artistic or entertainment talents like acting and singing or even writing and directing should not be taken as seriously as they have been for the past few years. Without their camera crew, makeup artists, and some unknown and grunting writers behind them, all I can see from this star of Game of Thrones is an inflated sense of ego, cliché display of personality or lack thereof, and immature if not idiotic points of view and arguments. And in comparison, Evangeline Lilly's post regarding the pandemic and how we should watch out for our political leaders, which is supposedly the target of the video I just showed you, seem much more well thought out and sophisticated, even though one may justifiably find their actions described in the post, namely dropping our kids off to some community event, kinda ignorant and reckless. The later events that occurred all around the world, in my humble opinion, vindicated Evangeline Lilly's call for caution, from China continuing its complete lockdown of various cities, to Russia forcefully deporting Chinese nationals, to Canadian lawmakers talking about legislation to penalize quote-unquote misinformation about the pandemic, to the no bunk ban in New Zealand, and arbitrary control of citizen movement in Michigan that partially prompted the protest a few days ago. And finally, to a couple of days ago, a Michigan deputy allegedly threatening to arrest a teenage girl over her Instagram post about her experience with the illness. If there's anything that I can applaud a celebrity's political stance on, it's the call for caution against political leaders' attempts at grabbing power in times of crisis and perceived emergencies. It is because that this is on one of those rare moral and philosophical causes that results in good and with almost no unintended consequences and inherently non-partisan by nature. However, at least in the media sphere, this kind of caution goes greatly underappreciated. The voices like Sophie Turner, with a weird bobblehead, got propped up with heavily sensationalized stories in order to craft a narrative of ever-worsening crisis and panic. All the while, journalists are asking self-righteous and virtue signaling questions during the daily White House press briefings, and broadcast companies and tech companies are pulling the combat misinformation card to censor information as if they are the Ministry of Truth. And if during a normal time where we do not have an infectious pandemic going on, the sort of draconian policies and measures taken by the authorities, the public, especially by those in the US, would be outraged. Alas, partly due to the ongoing pandemic and the scary curve, and partly due to the years of conditioning done by the media, the entertainment industry, and the education system failing to inspire critical thinking skills on areas where most needed, the sugar-coated poison of totalitarian government control is being fed to us with disappointingly little resistance. Not only have I seen people willingly submit their own autonomy to the government and practically begging the government to enforce the quarantine because they saw annoying and stupid kids going on spring breaks. I have also seen people who are otherwise pretty fair-minded stating that they are okay with tattling on their neighbors if they saw them partying. And I have seen people displaying overwhelming dismissive attitude towards any idea that a prolonged lockdown might be a cure worse than a disease, or any discussions on the damage to personal freedom from the lockdown policies and orders. And I believe this is precisely the kind of times where individual freedom needs to be championed and the power-hungry mobs and politicians needs to be faced with a firm stand and lines drawn. One should face the fact that just like freedom of speech is not about protecting the popular and publicly promoted speech, personal freedom is not about the behavior and choices that most people find acceptable. I agree with the call to limit interpersonal interactions during this time. In fact, I have been doing it to a certain extent well before the lockdown, And being cautious about these actions is something I would definitely agree with. But a line of personal freedom should not be drawn according to my preferences and distastes. And a similar principle should apply to the situation where some preferred behavior is being prescribed by the government as well as those organizations with some level of power and influence. And when these organizations, institutions, and the government are seemingly banding together to call for the surrender of personal freedom to the government and even inciting snitching amongst the public, it becomes exactly the kind of times that generations of freedom advocates and thinkers have been warning us about, where governments and powerful organizations and institutions took advantage of an ongoing crisis to take more emergency power and establish new order per their liking and future benefits. This is where the loss of personal freedom can hardly be won back. You would not expect these temporary emergency powers just be given up by the institutions that hold them. If anything, the mere actions of grabbing and exercising this kind of power provides precedents for these institutions to justify utilizing this kind of power again, or even expanding upon it if given a chance. If you think this is far-fetched, just think of the war on terror after the terrible attack of the 9/11 and how it led to the Patriot Act. I haven't got the chance to talk about this yet, but think about how this kind of governmental power grab will impact and poison the local communities and local politics. The case of Michigan deputy allegedly threatening a teenage girl and her family with arrest of disorderly conduct over the girl's Instagram post is a clear sign of this. Governmental power grab does not limit its reach and scope to the higher-up schemes and grand-scope policies. It empowers the power-hungry and power-stripping individuals in positions of minuscule power to cause much more greater harm to the communities they supposedly serve. Think about the Karens and barbecue Beckys, the all sort of local snitches who have affinity to tattling on others. And think about how their damage to the local communities could have been when the laws are actually on their side and are more zealous than ever in throwing out cites and tickets and occasional manhandling of teenagers. That would be all for my video today. I hope you like it and I hope to see you next time. And at the end of this video, I'm going to leave you with a short footage taken from China, where a group of antiviral spread volunteers barged into a home of multiple family members and assaulting them for daring to have a family gathering inside their home to play mahjong, a Chinese board game which typically requires 4 participants. And yes, these are volunteers.
宣传国际选手回来，今天还打，完全把当二边锋。是不是个？是不是吧？啊，今天能不能在一起找这个去吧？对不对？是。
Perhaps they're all remembering that old saying, power corrupts.
And absolute power corrupts absolutely.